Hello and welcome to episode 29 of The Death of E-Learning. Yes, it's the podcast where we courageously leap into the wormhole of L&D and we travel to the future before coming back to hand you, dear listeners, the scoop on what the future holds. Or we may just get a guest who's done the hard work and research for us and who can give us a good idea about what L&D will look like in 5 years' time. Which is what we've done, I believe. Stefan, how are you?
Hello, yes, it's me. I'm very well, thank you. It's a really special episode indeed this time because we've got an excellent guest and are discussing a thrilling topic, and for yet another reason, which we'll reveal only at the end. So let's keep our lips sealed and move on to the excitement at hand. What's in store for our listeners today, Luke? You've already hinted that it's a futuristic episode this time.
Yes, there's no looking back. We're looking at what L&D is going to look like in 5 years' time, 2030. And who better to talk about this with than our Director of Content Software and friend of the podcast, who we've had on before, Lindsay Coode. She's written a white paper on what the learning world will look like in the year 2030.
Exactly. She has. It's called Workplace Learning 2030, the 7 shifts reshaping how we learn at work. And it's so interesting. I've read it a bunch of times. In fact, Lindsay and I did a webinar about it a few weeks back. And you've read it more recently, Luke. What did you make of it?
I agree. It is a very well-researched paper. And critically, it's focused on what people actually can do and what organisations should do to prepare for this change that's happening and for this transition that's happening in the learning space between now and 2030.
Yes. And Graham and I got to speak to Lindsay and quiz her on how she wrote it, why she wrote it, and what she, with all the knowledge that she has and that she's accumulated during this process, thinks will be the most important, far-reaching and surprising changes we'll see. It was really great. I can't wait for everyone to hear all about it.
Well, without further ado then, shall we have a listen to what Lindsay has to say?
Let's do it. Okay, here we are with Lindsay Coode. Hello, Lindsay. Welcome back.
Thank you, Stefan. Good to see you both.
It's so nice of you to return. You were on the podcast a few months ago now, with James Milani on where we talked about AI initially. It feels like a while ago now. So much has happened. Right?
That might be approaching maybe a year and a half.
I'm not going to hazard a guess because I have no concept of how much time has passed.
I mean, yeah, ever since COVID, my sense of time is just nothing. So I have no idea where we are, and in time and space, which is particularly prescient when we talk about how fast things are moving in the L&D world.
Exactly.
And just trying to keep up in itself is a task and challenge. But we'll get onto that, Stefan.
Exactly. For anyone who hasn't listened to the last episode that you were on, Lindsay, could you just quickly tell us and our listeners what you do at Learning Pool?
Yeah, sure. So my role has changed a bit since I last spoke to you. So when I spoke to you previously, I spoke to you about generative AI in L&D, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
My role at that time was head of innovation. I was heading up our labs team, which was our kind of sort of research centre where we really looked into the future at what learning and development might look like, how organizational development and performance might look like within organizations. And that's actually where this white paper came from. My current role, just for a bit of additional context on some of the things I might say, is I am now the Director of Content Software at Learning Pool. So I am responsible for all of our off-the-shelf content and also the software that we use to create it. And that includes our AI learning experiences and all of our e-learning modules and things like that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And you've already mentioned it. We're here today specifically to talk about the white paper that you created, Workplace Learning 2030. It's called The 7 Shifts Reshaping How We Learn at Work, which is out now on our website. And we'll keep coming back to that. Now, what is a white paper and what made you want to do it and how did you go about it? Can you give us a little bit of context of how it came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, at that time I was head of innovation. I was heading up our labs team. And so really my remit was to look at least 5 years into the future and consider what products we might want to create at Learning Pool to support our customers' organizations, learning and development teams. So that's difficult to do because nobody exactly knows what things are going to look like in 2030. But what we wanted to do was really kind of do a deep dive into what that landscape might look like to try and be much better informed than we felt like we were just by kind of the normal things that we do to keep up to date. So I don't know, like looking at LinkedIn, looking at analyst reports, but really go into quite a bit of detail on that. So a white paper really just gave us that kind of that room to do that deeper research, and really focus in on the issues and see kind of what we could pull out of those that might inform the work that we do. Basically, we did a number of different steps really. So the first one that we did was literature and industry research. So we didn't start from scratch on everything. So this is kind of like your secondary research. This is looking at all the research that people have done before you. So we focused a lot on industry experts like Gartner, the World Economic Forum, Fosway Group, and looked at all of the research they had done. So that gave us kind of like a macro view, I guess, that real high level kind of what do other people think is going on. But we didn't just want to leave it there. We could have just done that. That would have been interesting in itself, pulling all those things together. But what we really wanted to do was get some real world voices in to speak to our customers, find out what they were thinking, and what they were doing. Actually, it was quite surprising. So when you start to have these conversations, nobody's doing everything, but people are doing little bits here and there that you can see will gradually kind of get that sort of that wave going. And yeah, just the other thing about the real world voices is they tend to talk about challenges that we hadn't considered. And I think sort of I can't remember the exact quote, but it's kind of like challenge leads to innovation, basically. So hearing those challenges was really useful. And then obviously we took all of that data. So sorry, I should say we also did a survey as well. So we did conversations, but we also did a kind of a broader survey of the market and kind of the industries that we work in. So we then took all of that data and basically just tried to reshape it. I will admit to using some AI in here. It's quite difficult to take that much data and really work it through. So we did kind of give it to it and say, what do you think? What do these shifts look like? But then what we did is kind of we took that as a start point, but then made sure that we really referred it back to those real world voices, and that it really spoke to the customers that we were having those conversations with. And it wasn't like a one-off conversation. It was something that we kept doing till we got to a point where we felt like we'd really kind of unpicked it to an extent where we had a really good understanding of it as well.
Yes. Yeah. And that's having read the white paper a number of times, because we've already done a webinar together on it. That's really one of the things that I really like about it, the fact that it's so connected to what customers are doing, what customers are thinking. And every one of the shifts has at least one of them or two customers' impact and quotes from them to kind of connect it to reality. So, yes, we won't have time to go through all 7 of the shifts in the paper. So we'll make sure we'll focus on the overall change and pick out those shifts that you think will have the most impact on people, the organization, learners. If it's at all possible to give like an elevator pitch or a 1 or 2 sentence summary of what learning will look like in 2030, can you give us an attempt at what that would be?
Yeah, so this is really tricky. And actually, I mean, it's something that I have thought about, because obviously when we're doing webinars and things like that, then we need to have that kind of real sort of high level view. But I think fundamentally it's that workplace learning will move from being very event based, very centralized, sort of contained within L&D, to something that is much more adaptive, continuous, and integrated with the wider business. So I think that's the key things. It's likely to be AI powered. I think we're all probably well aware of that. And I would hope that it will really focus on driving measurable performance, improved skills, improvements also in compliance. They're kind of the 3 areas that we really focus on when we're thinking about kind of why people learn.
That's a very nice intro into this.
there's a lot I've read through the paper as well, and it feels very actionable. There's a lot of points in there that organizations can take on board and start to think about and deconstruct and analyze where they are and how they can either start hopping on the train in order to make these changes, or analyze how they're doing things currently in their own setup, so that they can make sure that they don't get left behind in this sort of ever-changing landscape. And we'll go through those sort of 7 shifts in a minute. Like I say, Stefan mentioned we won't be able to go into every single one in detail. That's what the paper's there for. People can go read it in more detail.
That's right.
But before we list through what those are, I wondered what your specific motivation as a person was to write this paper. What motivated you to pull all this knowledge and to distill it down into something that felt actionable? Maybe that was the motivation itself. But yeah, I'll what were your thoughts approaching this?
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, it was partly because that was my remit. So I needed to have an understanding of what 5 years in the future looked like. But as I started to write it, that was the thing that I really realized. I didn't want it to feel like something that people would go, well, that's all very nice, but how do I do that? What can, like, that just seems really scary. That's very different to what we're doing now. So I wanted to try and make it actionable. So I'm glad that you did find it was like that. So yeah, even if it's just like small things that people could do, and I tried to focus on kind of it not being about the technology. So whatever technology you may have, you should be able to do some of this. I'll try and do that with any kind of talks or papers or blogs that I'm doing. But I think also kind of part of the motivation was that we're talking about the future of workplace learning, but the reality is, as I kind of alluded to earlier, it's already happening in places. And so you're seeing that kind of sea of change. So yeah, just really wanted to kind of make sure that we fully understood kind of what was going on, because when things are changing so fast within organizations, I think it's easy for us as sort of like vendors or agencies, whatever you want to call us, to miss some of that and to miss the really good work that's going on within organizations.
Yeah, and that's something that's you've pointed out there that definitely leapt out to me from this. It wasn't just, hey, you need this certain piece of software in order to progress your current standing. It wasn't just like, hey, buy from Learning Pool. It really is a sort of a deconstruction of the current workspace and looking at the past to see how the future's formed. And like I say, it's that sort of distilling the behaviors of the organization and really looking at those goals and trying to understand where you are, where you want to be. I'll mention those 7 shifts now, and then we can talk about them a little bit. So you've distilled it down into a list of 7, which is 1, AI and automation; 2, skills development and internal mobility; 3, evolving learning expectations; 4, changing use cases impact delivery; 5, integration, simplification and ecosystem thinking; 6, business impact and analytics; and 7, compliance and regulatory learning evolution. So, which one of those do you think is the shift you foresee having the biggest impact overall, or at least which is the one that spoke out to you the most?
I hate to say it, but it does have to be AI and automation.
Yeah.
Part of me really doesn't want it to be.
I expected it to be.
But it kind of is. And I think there's the reason for that is that it will change not only learning and development and what we do there, it is changing businesses. Even if it's just the fact that people are using it to help them in their roles through whichever methods they have available to them. So we're a Google house. We tend to use Gemini, or dip into other large language models as needed. But yeah, things are working people are working very differently already. And I think that gives us, for L&D, that gives a particular challenge. I mean, there's a number of things that learning and development can do around AI. It's like, one, they could be responsible for making sure people do use it to its kind of best use, making sure that people are using it to be more efficient, but also know the kind of the issues with using it and things like that. And obviously nearly all software has some level of AI built in, or generative AI built in, whether that's for a good application. I think there has been an awful lot of kind of, we must have generative AI in our products, without actually really thinking about whether they add value. I was listening to some examples of kind of people that have put AI into their products because customers have asked for them, and this isn't learning and development, this is kind of outside of L&D and their software products, but then they can see that nobody's actually using them, but people say they want them. It's like, so therefore developers feel like they need to put them in. So I think that kind of goes back to that. We're really making sure that we know what the purpose is and what we're using it for. But then also it will transform L&D roles. We know that you can now, I'm just going to try and I know it's a podcast, but I can see Graham and Stefan's faces as we're speaking. So now you can, at the press of a button, you can convert a policy document into a piece of e-learning, which I can imagine, I probably know what you think of things like that, but they are getting better. And if you're working with subject matter experts and things like that, then actually it can get you, say, 70-80% of the way to creating something. And that really changes what we do. It means that L&D can be much more focused on kind of strategic areas if they're not having to spend that time creating content as such.
Yeah. There was a big anchor point throughout this that I kept coming back to, and as a learning designer, someone in the sort of learning experience space, that idea of learner centricity still seems very core, no matter what technological step you're taking or the software you're using. It feels very much this shift needs to be serving the organization, but also we need to be, making sure we serve the right learning application to the audiences we have, which is something we've been banging on for years, and this is something we've been trying to make this shift happen for a long time as a learning designer, and Stefan's role as well. This is something that is like at the forefront of what we try to do. It seems like these shifts still very much keep this in mind, no matter the technology that's happened. Is we need to be making sure we're serving stuff that serves not only a fluid experience that is kind of seamless and aligns with the expectations that the modern tech user has, and the way that we just consume media and content as a society now, but also making sure that still means something, and it's integrated into the workflow. It has purpose, and it isn't just forgotten about. It really seems to anchor in that experience of taking in that learning and trying to transform an organization through its people, and making sure we're having the right approach to behavior changes, as well as making sure they have the latest technology to help them keep up with that, because obviously you can't just have one without the other.
And AI and automation are kind of, and you say this, Lindsay, in the paper, about one of the things that are already out there are the AI software pieces that can easily transform the type of the content format of learning. So you've taken the document and turned it into a piece of e-learning, but you can also turn it into a podcast, depending on your audience's need or preference, and that is already happening. We've got customers quoted, I believe, in the paper who are already doing things like that, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. And in my role of kind of heading up our library content, up until now, we've very much focused on e-learning, but we know that that isn't necessarily the format that people want these days. So I always use the example, I probably may have even said this on your podcast before, but if I want to walk the dog and I want to learn something at the same time, I am much more likely to go to a podcast than I am to an e-learning module, because I'll probably fall over or land in a puddle in the middle of a field. But yeah, if I can listen to it, that's great. It means I've got half an hour at lunch when I'm walking the dog, and I can go along, and that saves me some time later in the day and things like that. And yeah, as you say, we can do that now. So that's something that we're looking to bring into our content collections as well, is multiple different formats of the same content. Because it used to be that we were very scared to do that, because if something changed, then we had to completely recreate it. Whereas now there are tools that will allow us to just edit a few words. We don't have to go back out to kind of audio talent. But then we can also use it to kind of get people thinking a bit differently about kind of how they use those materials. So we'd like to do kind of more sort of bite-sized things. This goes back to what you were saying, Graham, about the human being kind of the most important person. You can't have learning if you haven't, well, you can if you've got animals, I guess, but generally we're aiming our learning at humans. So some of the stuff we've been thinking around is kind of, can we do like maybe a short video that somebody could use within a lunch and learn type setting within a face-to-face environment, or remotely, it doesn't really matter, but then getting people to talk about things and getting people to challenge each other and giving some kind of conversation starters. And we want to kind of bring some of that in as well. And I think that's probably much more fit for the kind of the modern way of wanting to engage with learning than necessarily just e-learning modules. We will keep those because we know that they're a nice easy way to get things onto your platform, but yeah, a bit of variety is good too.
Absolutely. And AI will have an impact on the way e-learning works and looks and feels as well. You know, it already is. And I can't stop myself from mentioning the one thing that I work with a lot, because it is actually our automation tool and its integration with Claude AI, where we can ask learners open text reflection questions, very similar to in our AI assess tool. And learners get feedback. If you're talking about a cohort-based learning program, for example, you can train the AI to be the SME who feeds back on what learners are thinking and saying. And you can do that to as many learners as you want, not just as many as the SME person has time for. So that's a really great benefit that's already out there.
Yeah, definitely. And it really helps people. It really helps people learn, because if you actually get that feedback, it makes you think, it makes you question what you said in the first place. Whereas if it's just a model answer, you're just kind of like, well, I didn't really think about it to begin with because I knew I wasn't going to get any personalized feedback, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always kind of like use the phrase, you can kind of feel your brain working almost.
Yeah.
And I think that really does have a much bigger impact.
The sort of customers and learners that we've done this with already, the feedback that we've got was that it actually makes people pay a lot more attention to the questions, because they know they're actually going to get automated feedback. They're going to get proper personalized feedback that is for them. So not only is the feedback itself valuable, it just deepens, like you say, that cognitive engagement. So it's really working on a number of fronts, which is great.
Yeah, it's far more active, and that's what we need, and that's what we strive
Precisely.
for, really, isn't it? So that's how you get true engagement, then, isn't it?
Exactly.
You can't just rely on a model answer. You have to be involved.
Yes. So so that was the shift with the biggest impact, automation and AI. But as you were working on the white paper, was there a shift, a change that really surprised you, that you hadn't anticipated, or that you think has the most potential to surprise all of us, maybe?
I don't know whether it was surprise, but I think the one that I find most interesting is the integration, simplification, and ecosystem thinking.
Right.
And by that, we're kind of almost, as a learning platform organization, this might seem a strange thing to say, but kind of moving away slightly from that kind of all learning being hosted in this kind of monolithic learning management system, basically, that is not always the easiest to access. So that's one side of it, is what can we do to make learning much more accessible? Because we all know that if you hit a login and you can't remember your details, you'll probably give up at that point. You're busy, you've got better things to do than go digging around and doing password resets and things like that. But I think almost what's nice about that, and I think this links to the data as well. So rather than talking about, so we've always, as a kind of learning and development, we've always been very keen on like completions, knowing that people have engaged, well, use engaged with quote marks there, click through probably as quickly as they thought they could get away with, and then answered the test at the end. But we've always kind of been quite keen to see that, kind of know that people have completed it, know that people have passed the assessment. That's been our main data points. Whereas now learning and development really are talking about kind of behavioural impacts. What are the business objectives that we can contribute to? And this isn't always easy. And again, this is something that we're looking to bring into some of our off-the-shelf collections, is help people look at what those data points might be, so that they can go and find the right people within their organisations who can help them measure them, or even measure them themselves. But yeah, so that makes us less worried about being able to track how many people completed our e-learning. Basically, that is no longer us proving the return on our investment. It's a lot deeper than that. So I think moving more into we've talked for a long time about learning in the flow of work and things like that, but I think just being able to do things like send a really short piece of content to someone's Slack or Teams that they can look at, literally spend a couple of minutes, and it's almost easier to just look at it and do it than it is to set a reminder. So this, particularly in compliance, I think this is a really interesting one, moving away, and this is covered quite a lot in I think the last shift around compliance, rather than that kind of once a year complete your compliance module and you're certified or compliant, told you're compliant for the next year. Actually, can we just send one behavioural question every few weeks and really start to kind of dig into how people are doing? And it's easy to think, oh, people won't do that, but I think they will. If it's literally one question and it takes them less than a minute, I think you'd probably be quite surprised by how much people do it, because it will become a lot more trouble to be nagged about doing it than it will to actually do it. So I think that's probably what I see as the most interesting shift, is that real kind of, it's real engagement. And like I was saying before about kind of doing like lunch and learn sessions, you don't necessarily need to know that somebody has watched a video when you can actually maybe do some qualitative reporting on kind of how engaged and the discussions that were had within a online facilitated session or something like that. You could probably get a lot more insight into the culture of the organization in that way. So just thinking a bit differently, I think, is interesting.
And we could talk about the history of the compliance tick, or rather the completion statement equals learning, for probably 5 hours without a problem at all. But all of that comes from compliance learning of old, and it's a sort of safe thing, isn't it? The fact that the learner's completion equals that they've learned and understood the thing, whereas what we're moving into is something that is a lot more convincing as a metric to actually demonstrate learning, which is not something that we have been able to do for very easily for a very long time. So I think it's going to, it makes learning more meaningful, and it's going to drive up the quality of the learning that we make as well, consequently.
The way the white paper opens, which has this sort of scenario vision of what a 2030 learning intervention could look like, that it does feel far more integrated, and that you're learning as you work, as opposed to being set off to the side and just told to do some learning that you might not even think about again until if it's compliance related stuff, you might not ever think about it until something bad has happened or it's come up again.
Yes.
Or if you need to pull from a certain specific document that was referenced in this piece of training. So it's something that becomes far more integrated and becomes just part of the way we work, instead of another add-on, which I totally see the benefit of something like that. And again, being able to learn on the go, optimizing for the way the world works now with mobile first sort of approaches where possible, it just seems like a no-brainer to me that that's the world we live in now. We kind of have to catch up and shift the way we work and the way we produce learning materials to meet that. 2030 isn't that far off, really. It's 5 years, but as we talked about, time doesn't really mean anything at the moment. It sort of just goes by in a flash. So what do you think in the next 5 years that organizations, no matter their size, whether big or small, in between, what do you think? What do you think they can do to prepare for and adapt for this new approaching world? Are there any sort of the white paper has a lot of actionable tips, but is there anything that you would bring up to the forefront as we're talking now?
Probably one of the ones I've talked about, in fact, probably alluded to both of them a little bit. So I think the main ones would be prioritizing very personalized learning. So looking at how, particularly with AI, we can use it to personalize learning based on learners' role and experience. So that they're not doing things that they don't need to do. A bit like Stefan talked about, using things like automation to provide that personalization. so that they really feel like it's for them, even if it's asynchronous, even if they're not doing it as a cohort and things like that. But I also think doing things in cohorts, getting that social interaction really helps with people thinking about how they apply it in the real world. So I know, Stefan, that you've been working on a program recently around kind of first line leaders, but just having those kind of, if you've got a group within an organization, say you've got 10 new leaders who need to go through this, get them talking to each other, get them to help each other, support each other. It's like, I think we've kind of forgotten that. I mean, we're probably as guilty of this as many organizations. We are not completely fully remote as a business, but we're not far off. I would say the majority of our people are remote. And it's quite easy to feel quite isolated, especially for new managers or people new to the business. So think about how we can kind of bring some of that sort of social personalization into learning programs as well. And I think the other one would be that proving impact, not completion. I think that's really key, and really kind of does kind of change how we look at things and what we do. So an example that I have from the other day is, so my new role, I spend a lot more time in spreadsheets than I used to, and some of them are quite challenging. And the first time I tried using Gemini, which is Google's kind of chatter help assistant type thing, it wasn't particularly useful. It would kind of say things like, I haven't learned to do that yet, an awful lot. Whereas I asked it to do something the other day, I was trying to pick out kind of some matching bits in a spreadsheet and I wanted to kind of see, and I just said, oh, can you highlight, how can I highlight kind of where you've got matching in different columns? It was a massive spreadsheet. And rather than telling me how to do it, it just did it. And I was kind of like, ooh, this is fun.
Yes.
So we're almost moving from that kind of just asking AI how to do something to it being able to do it. And I mean, that completely changes how we teach people to use particular tools. I'm not saying that kind of foundational Excel is going to go away straight away, because there is something about having those skills. But if it's something, I think the pivot table is always the one that's been used. I haven't actually tried it, but I bet you can now ask Gemini to give you a pivot table and it would probably do it. So it does start to change what we need to do as learning and development people.
Again, it becomes about understanding the AI tool in this case, and knowing how to wield that for your benefit, rather than being super advanced with formulas in Excel. So that's very interesting. Yes,
a good thing for most of us, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Now that's what you talked about, and you did it in a tool agnostic way as well, focusing on personalization. Those are the sort of things that people can start, that organizations can start looking at now, to prepare for what's coming in 2030, or or to start that journey. And what are we doing at Learning Pool to kind of help our customers along?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, we're looking all the time at kind of how we can move the needle in terms of what we offer to customers. So obviously our AI content, I think, is one way. It's like we talk a lot about kind of fairly passive e-learning. Obviously our AI content, it's impossible to be passive. If you don't do anything, then you will not get a good score. You won't get the feedback that you need. So that real kind of like using things like generative AI to get people much more engaged in the learning process. Obviously within our platforms, there's probably people that can talk to this a lot better than I can, but really looking at how we can put best practice into those platforms. So where we're building, for example, say AI into our authoring, making it a bit of an expert in its own right, so that it's guiding you on that process. It's not just giving you a regurgitated policy document because that's what it knows how to do. It is actually using things like instructional design, and I think this will apply to our assessment functionality as well as we get further down the line with that. How do you write really good questions and make sure that they actually are testing what you need people to know, not just not just random questions asking them to regurgitate facts and things like that. So yeah, I think we're doing quite a bit. And as I said, in the world of sort of library content, we really do want to look at how we can give people the pieces to put together more impactful programs. So I think between that and the features that we're building into our platform, we should be able to get to a point where it's quite easy for learning and development teams to do some of the stuff that we're talking about, whether they have our platform, whether they have our content, whether they have different bits and pieces from other vendors and things like that, then it should all kind of work together to give a really good experience for their learners.
Yeah. And I think that because we cover such a breadth of the learning and development world at Learning Pool. We've got the platform, we've got the automation projects, we've got off the shelf, we've got bespoke content. We can connect the dots in a way that maybe an organization that only makes one of those elements can't do quite so well and quite so seamlessly. So I think that's got to be a benefit, right?
And hopefully do it in a way that makes it easy for people. That's the thing I come back to. So I know when I was talking to people, one of the things they were like, yeah, we love the idea of all this, but we don't have the time or the budget possibly. But actually the one that we heard the most was time. So yeah, how can we give them the pieces of the puzzle that they can put together to really make it work for their organizations basically and help them achieve their goals? So
yeah, make it simple. Make it worthwhile, make it useful. Absolutely. Okay, that was the end of our formal questions. But we all, you'll probably remember that we always ask, well, every interviewee our Death of E-Learning question. So we thought we'd make it a little bit bespoke to what we've been speaking about. So if you could pick one behavior or process that organizations should commit to the bin of history right now, what would that be?
I knew you would ask. So I have given it some thought, and I went round in circles because you need a list somewhere of what's been consigned to the bin so that we know that we need to pick something different. But I have gone for the annual compliance checkbox courses. I don't think they impact people's behaviour in any way. I think particularly the more years that you do them for, I mean, I've been working for probably 30 years and I've probably done a cybersecurity or whatever it might be every year. And I can honestly say I probably read less and less of them each year. So why am I doing them? That said, we do always have an assessment and I've always passed the assessment. So the knowledge is obviously in there somewhere. So I think that's fine. But yes, I mean, that would be the bare minimum, is start with the assessment for people that have done it previously. Don't make them go through the whole thing. But actually, as I said, I think just really kind of for compliance, focusing on the bare bones of the knowledge that people need, signpost them to more information if and when they need it, check that they know how to behave in particular situations, ideally over time. I think that would be mine.
Yeah, going back to those behavioral questions rather than policy related rote knowledge, you recall.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't sink in, or if it does, it already has sunk in over time. So, yeah, I'm always a big fan of the pre-assessments, and then trying to create scenarios or learning for specific circumstances. As opposed to just relying on just the general piece of knowledge that, that sort of just permeates those sort of courses.
We in the last episode we spoke to a whole bunch of attendees of the Learning Pool Live conference last month, and we spoke to one person who works as a freelancer. So she goes into different companies, does a bit of work for them, and the thing she always has to do when she goes into a new company is doing their compliance training. So she's forever doing new compliance training over and over and over again. Poor lady.
Oh man, that seems like some sort of cosmic punishment or something.
It does, doesn't it? Big Groundhog Day.
It does, yeah.
Well, that's the other thing, is learning designers, most of us have spent many years writing compliance training as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're part of the problem.
Yes. So, Lindsay, thank you so very much for joining us again for this episode. Before you go, where can people get their hands on the white paper?
They can get hold of the white paper on Learning Pool's website, so learningpool.com. There is a section called Downloads, and it's called Workplace Learning 2030. yes, easy to get hold of, and definitely worth a read. As I said, there's lots of practical tips in there that hopefully, even if you feel like you don't have kind of the budget to go out and buy something new, it might just give you some ideas for things that you can implement now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bye, Lindsay.
Bye.
So that was Lindsay talking about her white paper, Workplace Learning 2030, the 7 shifts reshaping how we learn at work. What did you think of the session, Stefan? You were in the room with her at the time. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was really great. Time passed so quickly because Lindsay is so good to talk to. She just speaks clearly and directly right to the L&D professionals who are going to benefit from her research. She's always a pleasure to have on the mic. What do you think? How was it for you who wasn't in the room at the time?
Oh, awful. I actually listened to it on 5 times speed just to,
get through. Yeah.
No. In sincerity, it was a really good episode to listen to, and Lindsay is such good value, and much like her paper, her answers were detailed enough to really sink your teeth into, but concise enough that there was no fluff, and that's kind of like the learning that we try and make, isn't it? And it was great to share in her learnings about the organisational development that's likely to happen over these next 5 years in the learning space. What was your favourite part?
What was my favourite part? Do I have to choose just one?
Your favourite 10 then?
Oh, no, okay. I had 2, but I'll choose the one, which is just the focus on ROI and organisational data, because we will ever more we'll be in a position where the technology that we've got lets us prove that what we're creating, the learning that we're building, is actually having an impact on business outcomes, as people say. We can now integrate learning data more and more with other business intelligence and show that far from being a cost center, L&D can actually be a cost saver or even a revenue generator. So I think that is one of those things that are going to be absolutely crucial and more possible for more and more organizations.
It's an exciting time, isn't it? All this change does have such potential to bring so much good to what we do, and
exactly
for the people that have to are subjected to the learning that's out there, the digital learning. And yeah, I think the thing that stands out for me is the potential for personalisation.
Yes.
Because if we can personalise learning and make it more targeted and directly useful, maybe, and this is just, absolutely unthinkable a few years ago, maybe people won't roll their eyes so much at the thought of having to do workplace training. Maybe it'll be more useful and actually something good, an enriching part of their lives, if it's personalised to them and indeed helpful. That's the dream.
We can only hope.
Right, shall we discuss Lindsay's Death of E-Learning answer? And by the way, she was so right. We do need to brief guests with a list of previous submissions of what people have said.
Yeah, you see, I was thinking about this, and I feel like we are building a library, but we're also accumulating evidence for the things that people most want to get rid of, because her answer was she wants to get rid of those compliance checkbox courses. And we've had that before a bunch of times from similarly learned L&D experts.
Yes, we have had it before, but I find it's always interesting to just hear why. Like, everyone sort of touches on similar things, but it's interesting to hear their reasoning and exactly what's bothering them so much, and hear them break it down. Like Lindsay saying she's done a similar cybersecurity course every year for the last 30 years, or so it feels.
Yeah.
And what good is that really doing? Can it be done in a better way? And in a way, I think being exposed to that is what makes us think, can it be done in a better way?
I remember, and this is not hyperbole, this is not just made up. Genuinely, one of the reasons why I became a learning designer is because I thought there must be a better way. There must be a less painful way of doing this.
There must be a better way. Well, thankfully there is.
Exactly.
Just work in this industry for how long? How long have you been working?
Started in 2009, so, it's getting on.
Yeah. And eventually it'll get better.
Lindsay's white paper, Workplace Learning 2030, The 7 Shifts Reshaping How We Learn at Work, is available to download at learningpool.com. And we, wherever we can, will add a link to the player. But if you don't see it, it's because that piece of software didn't let us do that. So we'll try when we can, but it might not happen on every podcast player.
I should say thank you again to Lindsay Coode for being our guest. As ever, great to have you on.
Yes, indeed. Exactly.
Goodbye, everybody.
Actually, hang on a minute. There was something else we needed to talk about. There's a rather large piece of news that we should discuss.
Yeah, why are there extra men in the room? Where have these men come from?
Well, man.
Oh, a wise man, I hope.
A wise man, yes.
I'm also here. I've just appeared.
Oh, yeah, you're also here. Oh, no. Okay, men, indeed. More men. There is a new face and a new voice here, isn't there?
Are you expecting me to jump in here and introduce my face and voice?
Yes, he's not doing too well yet, but he'll grow into the role.
Gosh, imagine if in that moment we found out that he had mic fright.
So what is happening? I think you guys need to explain what's going on.
Oh, yeah. This is my last one.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
I was hoping for more than that.
He's not going to be on the podcast anymore. And why is that, Luke?
Well, I'm leaving for pastures new. Exciting new adventures, as people on LinkedIn would say. You know, it's been great doing the podcast, and I'm glad we've got to do it for so long. And the positive thing as well is that it's not coming to an end. A succession plan is in place. I would never leave the death of e-learning in the lurch. You know, it's like a child, and at a certain age, you leave your children. No, you don't. They leave you. Oh, this analogy doesn't work. But I am relieved to know that the podcast is going to carry on from strength to strength. We have a new presenter joining the team, a very qualified young man. Dan, hello. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'd love to introduce myself. Young man, I don't think people introduce me as young man anymore, but I appreciate it, Luke. Listeners won't be able to tell, but I have a very grey beard and no hair.
That screams youth to me.
Yes, virility.
My name's Dan, and like you, Luke, I'm a learning designer at Learning Pool. Long-time listener, first-time contributor, and I'm glad to be contributing now as a host, not as a guest.
Yes. And people will have heard us mention you recently because you did the talk with Stefan at Learning Pool Live. You guys clearly know how to chat together. You know your stuff. This is why you were identified as a strong candidate, I believe.
Well, that's great to hear. I don't know what the panel discussion was, the who to select next, but I'm glad I made it through.
It was an extensive list. The email inbox exploded, didn't it?
Yes, exactly. Which that means that Dan hasn't scrolled up on the Slack channel that we have about our selection, which is interesting. Yes, so Dan, you were first choice, and we were dead thrilled that you said yes. So you're going to join us as the co-host from the next episode onwards. I'm very excited, and it's really, really sad to be losing you, Luke.
Oh,
but
yeah, the podcast won't be the same without you.
It will absolutely not be the same. Doesn't mean it will be worse, but it won't be the same.
I was a little bit disappointed when you decided to bring Dan on because I was looking forward to watching it, go downhill, watch you guys struggling,
crumble.
But no, it seems like you're going to carry on triumphantly.
We will muddle on after we've had the therapy to get over your departure. We will do our best, and hopefully, God, this sounds so weird, but hopefully you will listen in, and you probably know the email address as well to send in your recommendations and your fierce criticism. I hope.
Oh, is that Death of E-Learning at learningpool.com?
That is Death of E-Learning at learningpool.com, yes. But, so not wanting to drag this out all that much longer, I did want us to quickly step back in time a little bit and remind you of just a couple of things from the very beginning, the birth if you will, of the death of e-learning.
Oh.
So I've got a clip that I'd like to play you, Luke, to see how you feel about this.
Was ist das?
Listen to yourself, Luke. Here you are, the very first episode, the very first time you're talking.
So why are we here? Well, this is the Death of E-Learning podcast, as we've said. And here we're going to wrangle the big topics in the world of online learning and talk to some interesting people who may have a slightly different perspective from us. I mean, we are just two mere learning designers / instructional designers. We get on with our day-to-day and we see things in a certain way. Through talking to some interesting people, hopefully we can learn a bit and broaden our horizons in the e-learning world. Is that a fair summary? Just the immediate self-doubt at the end. Is that a fair summary? Is that what we're doing?
You sound so young.
I was.
About 15 years younger. What happened?
Gosh.
That episode came out on the 18th of January 2022. So it was a while ago. And how does it feel for you to hear that back?
I think we delivered on that brief. Yeah.
I'd say so.
Talked to some interesting people. And I want to tell myself to have a bit more confidence. Don't. Is that right? Is that right? Stefan, help me. But gosh, that is a long time ago, isn't it? Wow.
It is. But I do feel like you got a lot more confident as well. I think you got you were so, but that kind of confidence in podcasting mixed with the sensitivity to the subject. You know, if you think back to the LGBT episode that we did, that was so good, and you were especially brilliant in it, I think.
Thank you. I love ones like that, ones that we've done that kind of are relevant beyond e-learning, you know. I mean, obviously we talk about e-learning, but the ones where we've touched on things that are bigger issues, like the LGBTQ plus one or tech literacy, those stand out as particularly memorable, and I'm proud of those ones.
Same, yeah.
And I'm proud of the silly ones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of what we hope is our charm, I think. Now, there's one more file that I've got, because there's something that in all these years has remained unaddressed. And I also know that you're a highly accomplished snooker player.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you sound quite meek and mild there too as well.
I do, don't I?
I think we both got confident.
We got more confident, yes.
I also know that you're a highly proficient snooker player.
So you've never cleared that up. Would you like to shed some light on what happened there?
Yeah.
Dad looks very confused.
In retrospect, that's weird that we put that out there and never addressed it.
Never cleared it up.
I'm not a highly, proficient snooker player. I just, basically, for my Duke of Edinburgh award, where you had to do a sport, I chose snooker, which is embarrassing. When I was about 14. And the fact I got away with that is ludicrous. Why didn't anyone say, come on, boy, do something proper? But I cheated the system.
You should have done something proper like darts.
Yeah.
That's a real sport.
Yeah, and now I play pickleball, so I don't think I've really progressed to anything proper.
No, it's one rung up. At least you're sort of like having to move.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, how funny. What throwbacks. Thank you for those.
I have a question for you, Luke. Are you annoyed that you're finishing your streak on episode 29 and not episode 30?
Yes, that thought has crossed my mind. 30 would have been nice. Because it suggests that I was pushed out before 30 could happen.
Yeah. A new era. We don't want him lingering around.
Yeah, but how nice that Dan gets to start on episode 30. That's a nice one to start on.
That's
it was a present to you, Dan.
I really appreciate that, Luke.
Maybe we can call that season 2.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Because we never changed seasons in all these years.
With a bold new direction.
Sorry, was that a bold new direction?
Oh, that took me ages. This is why we're bringing you on.
See, Dad is lightning quick. This is why we need to get rid of Luke.
Yeah, let's be honest. The cognitive decline, you've tried to cover it up, but it's been there.
The chemistry's already working. I'm loving it.
Well, it's a sad time.
Yes.
But we are looking forward to the new era, as it were, and we wish Luke all the best
Thanks. Hit me up on LinkedIn. And for the last time, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Alt.